On a quiet morning, I stepped into the Keeladi Museum. Not into the past, but into its lingering presence. And this wasn't just a museum visit. It was a direct encounter with the early roots of Tamil civilization. This is the story of how I journeyed back to a thriving settlement that once flourished along the Vaigai River, part of what we now call ancient Tamilakam. Much has been said about Keeladi, the groundbreaking discoveries, the astonishing dates, the profound insights into an ancient Tamil civilization. And while all of that is true and awe-inspiring, what struck me most was the intimate connection it offered. It wasn't about towering monuments or royal relics. It was about the quiet traces of everyday life, the lives of ordinary people, thousands of years ago. Imagine a pot someone once used to cook their meals, a bead they wore to feel beautiful, a tool shaped by hand. It's moments like these that bring home the truth. History isn't distant, it's human. One of the most striking galleries in Keeladi is the Ceramic Industries Gallery. A quiet hall lined with the remains of pots once used to store, to cook, to carry, and to remember. Here, you find the famed black and red ware, fired with technical mastery. Smooth red-slipped vessels, perhaps once filled with water, oil, or meaning. A spouted pot with a form so fluid it feels almost graceful. And white-painted sherds, still bearing brushstrokes that survived across 2,000 years. In a quiet corner of the museum stood a terracotta oven, modest in form but monumental in meaning. This clay stove still bears the press of fingers, a handmade pattern around its belly, and 2 breath holes where flame once danced. Perhaps it rested in a courtyard 2,000 years ago, feeding a family, warming a night, and holding stories in its smoke. One such scene comes alive in a Sangam poem, Perumpa Natro Padai, part of the Patu Patu, or 10 Idylls, of ancient Tamil literature. It paints a scene of forest dwellers, pounding grain, drawing water, and cooking dried meat in a broken-mouthed pot, on a worn clay oven, not so different from the one I saw at the museum. This isn't just an object. It's a memory of everyday life, of labor, care, and warmth. A kitchen fire that once nourished a family, now glowing quietly in the halls of history. Not far from Keeladi lies Kondagai, a quiet village with a remarkable past. Here, archaeologists unearthed 137 burial urns, some large, some sealed, many still holding bones, ornaments, and echoes. One urn held the skeletal remains of 2 individuals, likely twins. A quiet discovery, but one that stirred something ancient and poetic. These words come from Purana Nadu, one of the Etu Thokai, or 8 anthologies of Sangam poetry, composed over 2,000 years ago. In this verse, a grieving woman doesn't plead with gods or kings. She turns to the potter, asking not for comfort, but for space. For one final resting place, shared with her beloved. Millennia later, we find their echo, a real urn holding 2 lives, sleeping side by side in southern soil. The past doesn't always survive in stone. Sometimes it survives in verse, and sometimes in clay. In a quiet corner of the museum, stand figures who no longer speak, yet somehow still whisper. These terracotta figurines were shaped by ancient hands, perhaps as toys, as offerings or symbols of belief, each molded from the soil beneath their feet, each carrying the trace of a thumb, a moment, a memory. Some resemble stylized humans, others animals. Maybe they were given to children. Maybe they watched over a home. Or maybe they were just gestures of joy. They've lost their names. They've lost their owners, but not their presence. Clay remembers, even after the potter forgets. In ancient Keeladi, water wasn't just drawn, it was engineered. This ring well, with 33 terracotta rings, stacked precisely one over the other, is the largest ever found in Tamil Nadu. Each ring prevented the surrounding soil from collapsing, a quiet triumph of structural planning. Even Sangam poetry remembers these water systems. In Pattinapulai, a poem from the Patu, the 10 Idols of Sangam literature, the ancient port city of Kavarippumpattinam is described as having homes lined with ring wells woven into the rhythm of daily life. These weren't just features of infrastructure, they were signs of organized, thriving urban life. Then came the pipes, terracotta cylinders joined tightly and sealed with clay. Likely laid along planned routes, some underground, they carried water between spaces, weaving quietly through homes and courtyards. And then, in Paripadal, a Sangam-era anthology rich with devotion, love, and landscapes, one verse likens the force of water to an elephant's trunk streaming after a deep draw. Elegant, vital, alive. These weren't just waterworks, they were lifelines. The people of Keeladi mastered not only craft and commerce, but also comfort, channeling the life-giving waters of the Vaigai into their daily lives. In this gallery, I felt the pulse of power. Not royal power, but the power of work, of craft, of survival. Nails that held homes together. Chisels that carved wood, sickles that reaped grain. And then slag, furnace pipes, traces of smelting. This wasn't makeshift metalwork. It was industry, passed down, perfected, lived. And among the tools, a weapon, a rusted dagger, silent now, but once, perhaps glinting in defense or worn with pride. The iron artifacts of Keeladi speak of more than metallurgy. They speak of skill, of survival, and of beauty, forged in fire. Inside Keeladi's weaving gallery, I saw not just tools, but the quiet traces of lives that spun thread into memory. Spindle whorls, tiny, balanced, perfect. Bowls, perhaps once filled with dye or water for spinning. Loom weights, bone points for shaping fabric. Terracotta seals, that may have stamped cloth for trade. These were the tools of artisans. of fingers stained in indigo, of those who clothed not only bodies, but an entire civilization. In Purana Nuru 383, a wandering woman poet recalls the moment a chieftain's generosity changed her life. She says, "Clothed me in finely woven flower-like garments, shimmering like snakeskin and banana sheath." To be clothed wasn't just comfort. It was dignity, status, transformation. The textile tradition of ancient Tamilakam wasn't a detail. It was identity. And these quiet tools of Keeladi, they whisper that story still. In Keeladi, beauty was intimate, not only in the homes they built, but in how they adorned their bodies, how they groomed, how they cared. Carnelian, agate, and amethyst, beads shaped by skillful hands. Shell and glass bangles, fragile, colorful, worn every day. Terracotta earrings, molded with care. Gold, rare, but radiantly timeless. And then, two quiet artifacts. An ivory comb, its time-worn teeth still telling stories. An antimony rod, once used to line eyes with black coal. They speak of something unspoken, that the people of Keeladi didn't just live, they adorned themselves, looked in mirrors, and cherished appearance as an expression of self. Some beads came from distant shores, etched with journeys across land and sea. But the desire to feel beautiful? That was deeply human and universal. We often imagine the past as distant, silent, different. But standing among these delicate ornaments, I saw the opposite. They were just like us, grooming, dressing, caring for how they looked, not out of mere vanity, but as a part of their identity. Their beads and bangles aren't just remnants of the past. They are reminders of how close the past truly is. Among the artifacts of work and daily life, I found joy. Small clay dice, toy wheels, hopscotch carvings, figurines shaped like animals, gamesmen lined up like ancient pawns, ready to play. Keeladi had its warriors, its scribes, its weavers, and it also had its children, its thinkers at play, its evenings filled with laughter and strategy. The Tamil poets of old understood this joy. In Kali Tokai, a woman's happiness is likened to the thrill of rolling a 10 in dice. When he united with her on pearl-strewn shores, she was in bliss, like a man who rolled a 10 in dice. Dice made of ivory and terracotta were found here, cylindrical and cubical, rule-bound, intentional, designed for games. They speak of minds that competed, that played. As I stood among these quiet artifacts, I saw something universal. The instinct to play, to escape, to connect. Maybe a child waited for her mother to finish weaving and passed the time with dice. They aren't long inscriptions. No grand declarations carved in stone. Just a scratch, a symbol, a line etched into clay. And yet they speak. These marks, found on hundreds of potsherds at Keeladi, are more than random scratches. Some closely resemble symbols from the Indus Valley civilization, over 1,000 miles away and centuries apart. Was this cultural memory? A shared visual language? Or just coincidence? We don't know. But what we do know is that the symbols endure. Someone held that pot, and at some quiet moment scratched in a mark. Maybe it was a name, a prayer, a tally, a secret, or something only they understood. In these humble graffiti marks, we glimpse something universal, that even in ancient times, humans long to leave a sign, a quiet trace, a symbol that says, I was here. Among all the discoveries at Keeladi, few are as profound as these quiet fragments of clay. Scattered among the broken potsherds, archaeologists found brief inscriptions, short deliberate lines carved by hand. These are the earliest forms of written Tamil, known today as Tamil-Brahmi, names perhaps, marks of ownership, or quiet gestures of memory, etched not for monuments, but for moments. It's not poetry carved in stone. It's life, scribbled in clay. Dated between 500 and 300 BCE, these inscriptions show something powerful. The people of Keeladi weren't just artisans, traders, or weavers. They were literate. They wrote on pots, marked their belongings, maybe even sang their prayers in script. Centuries before the Sangam verses were ever written down, Tamil was already alive in letters. A pot may break, the sound may fade, but the letters remain. And in them, we don't just see a civilization, we hear its voice. And then there was this, an interactive game at the museum. Match ancient Tamil-Brahmi words to their modern Tamil forms. I've studied Brahmi script, mostly out of curiosity, and I learned Tamil as a second language back in school, even though my mother tongue is Sinhala. I can read most of it, even if I still stumble on the deeper meanings. But I couldn't resist this game. And yes, I got them all right.
May. Kom.
And then one word appeared, Ilankai, Lanka. Seeing the name of my island, written in ancient Tamil script, in a museum here in Tamil Nadu, it felt surreal. Like a distant thread of history had just looped back to say hello. It reminded me, writing isn't just about recording facts. It's about recognition, memory, identity. And across scripts, languages, and centuries, something in me still understood.
Hela K. Ilankai. Oh. Chontam. Yes.
Keeladi isn't just about carbon dating or archaeological proof. It's about rediscovering a living, breathing civilization, urban, vibrant, and deeply sophisticated. We see signs of pottery crafted with intention, beads traded and worn across regions, cloth spun from dyed thread, water channeled through brick and pipe with engineering precision. These weren't just settlements. They were planned spaces, organized, skilled, and beautifully human. Imagine the bustle of morning trade, the rhythmic sound of a loom, stories shared by the riverbank, the scent of rice steaming beside a terracotta oven. The museum doesn't just show objects, it revives voices. It made me realize history isn't just about names and dates. It's about lives. Lives lived with care, with skill, and with dreams not so different from ours. So while many videos focus on the what of Keeladi, what was found, what it means for history, my visit was about the how it felt. How it felt to stand amidst the echoes of an ancient urban culture. How it felt to connect with their language. And how it felt to be reminded of the incredible resilience and richness of our past. If you've only experienced Keeladi through articles and reports, I urge you, if you ever get the chance, to visit the museum yourself. It's located in the Sivaganga district of Tamil Nadu, just about 12 kilometers southeast of the historic city of Madurai, and a short distance from the actual archaeological site. It's an experience that goes beyond facts and figures, and speaks directly to the imagination. What ancient places have you visited that truly brought history to life? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more journeys through history and beyond. This is Hela Nomad. See you on the next path through history.